Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to create a coffee shop application which serves as a menu for a coffee shop. So basically what we are trying to do is that we are trying to design an interactive menu for a coffee shop, and it is basically going to be an Android application wherein the user could actually go through various categories of coffees. He could look at the product description and he could select any coffee which he wants. So the first thing which we need to do is that we need to create a new Android Studio project. So simply select a new Android Studio project and let's name this application as, let's say, Coffee Buzz. Then once we have the application name, simply click next, select the API level 15, click next and select a blank activity and let the name of your main activity be main activity. And as you could see, our project is ready. Now the next thing which we need to do is that in order to make this thing look attractive, what we are going to do is that we are going to download some images from the internet so as to make our application look attractive. Now I have stored my images inside the coffee folder, so if we have a look at these images, so these are the images which we'll be working with. So I would suggest you that you download some copyright free images from the internet and make sure that you have these images in the PNG format. Now chances are most of the time the images which we are going to use are going to be present in the JPEG format, but we actually want the images into the PNG format. So in order to solve this issue, what you could do is that as you could see, I have an image here which is present in the JPEG format. So if we go to properties, as you could see, this image is present in the JPEG format. Now in order to convert this image into a PNG format, what you could do is that you could simply right click on it, click on edit, and as you could see, this is our image right here. And now what you simply need to do is that you need to go to file, go to save as, and we have various options here. So instead of JPEG, what we are going to do is that we are going to select the option as PNG and we are going to store it on the desktop. So if we save here and if we return back to desktop, as you could see, we have now two images. So if we right click on the second image and go to properties, as you could see, we now have the image in the PNG format. So once we have the image in the PNG format, we could go ahead and use that image in our application. So what I did is that I have downloaded these images and I have converted them into PNG format so that they could be used in our application. And also make sure that you name these images so that it will be easy for you to use these images into your Android app. So the next thing which we do is that we simply copy these images. So I select them all, simply click copy, and we then return back to our Android Studio and go to drawable folder, and we are going to paste these images right over here. So simply click OK, and as you could see, now we have all the three images into our drawable folder. Now the next thing which we need to do is that as we are going to design a coffee shop application, we actually need a certain class which is going to handle the items which we are going to provide in our coffee shop. So the first thing which we do is that we create a new class so as to handle the items. So in order to create a new class, we go to the Java folder, and from these two folders we select the folder which contains our main activity. So we simply right click on it, go to new and select a new Java class. And in this class we are actually going to various attributes of a particular product which we are offering, and we are also going to associate some methods within it. So as we are providing some drinks into our coffee shop, let's name this class as drinks. So we type drinks and click OK, and as you could see, we now have our main class which is called as drinks, and we could type in the code in your class. And also make sure that you delete the unnecessary stuff which is displayed right over here. So it basically displays the author name and the date, so make sure that you delete it. And the next thing which we do is that we go ahead and write in some code into this class. So in our case, what we want to do is that for every drink we want to have a particular name, and we also need to mention the description of a particular drink. For example, what that particular drink contains. And finally, we need to have an image associated with the drink so that we could display the image of a particular product. Now in order to do so, we create three variables. So let's go ahead and create some variables. So we type private, then in order to store a name, let's create a string variable. So we type private string name. So this is the variable for storing the name of a drink. Then we have a variable for storing the description. So we type private string, let's name it as DESC. And the third variable which we want to create is going to be used in order to store the ID of an image. So we type private int and let's name it as image ID. So once we have these three variables ready with us, now let's go ahead and create an array for drinks. So in order to create an array for drinks, if you're familiar with Java, you will understand what we are typing in. So the first thing which we need to do to create an array is that we type public static final, and after final we specify the array name which we want to use. So we type drinks, then use this notation which is square brackets for an array, and then type in drinks. So this array right here is going to be of the drink types. So we type this equals, and inside curly brackets we are going to specify the elements which we want in an array. So basically in this array we are going to store multiple drinks which has the properties as name, description and image ID. So we create a first product in our array. So we type new drinks, and inside this we are going to specify the parameters for the drinks. So the first parameter is going to be the name of the drink, the second parameter is going to be the description, and finally we are going to have the ID of the drink. So let's go ahead and add some parameters to this drinks. So the first thing which we need to add is going to be the name. So let's add a name as latte. So this is for the latte, and let's add a description like instead of adding in a description, let's say this is a description for latte. So at the moment we are going to use a simple sentence like this so as to understand. And now for the image ID, we want to specify the ID for latte. So if we switch back to our drawable folder, as you could see, this is the latte image which we are going to use. So here we need to specify the ID of the image. So we type r dot, and as the image is present in the drawable folder, we type r dot drawable, then finally the image name which is latte. So we are going to do the same for all the other three drinks. So we simply copy this and paste it here. So this is going to be for the second one, and this is going to be for the third one. So now let's go ahead and change the parameters which are present in there. So for the second one, instead of latte, we are going to have cappuccino. So we type cappuccino, and let's say this is the description for cappuccino. So we remove this latte by cappuccino and change this ID to cap, which is an image for cappuccino. And the final one is for a filter coffee. So we are going to replace this latte by filter and replace this by filter as well. Or instead of filter, here we need to mention the image for the filter. So we are going to use this beans image right over here. So we type beans over here, and as you could see, it is showing us an error, and that is because we always need to define a constructor for such type of declarations. So let's go ahead and declare a constructor. So in order to declare a constructor, we type private drinks, and we are going to specify the parameters as name, description and image ID. So we type string name as the first parameter, string description as the second parameter, and the final parameter is going to be the image ID. So we type integer image ID, and inside this constructor we are actually going to assign the values for all these three. So we type this dot name equals name, then we type this dot description equals description, then finally we type this dot image ID equals image ID. And once it is done, we are good to go. And I did a simple mistake here. There should not be a semicolon right here. That is because it is parameters, and I by mistakenly have given a semicolon as a separator. So make sure that you use commas over here. So that was my mistake there. And also this should be DESC for description. So once everything is set up, we are good to go. And now the next thing which we are going to do is that we are going to add in some methods over here. So the first method which we are going to add is going to be the get description. The next one is going to be the get name. The third one is going to be the get image resource, and finally the toString method. So let's go ahead and add in some methods over here. So the first method is going to be the get description method. So we type public, then we type string, as this method is going to return the string value. Then we type get description, and inside it we simply type a single statement to return a description, so we type return description. So this is the get description method. Then we have a next method for get name, so we type public string, this is for get name, so we type public string get name, and we simply return the name, so we type name here. And the next method is going to be for the image resource or the image ID, so we type public, this is going to be of the type int, and we type get image ID, and inside it we actually return the ID which we get, so we simply type return image ID. And the final method which we are going to use is going to be the toStrings method, so we type public, then we type string, as this method is going to return a string, and then finally the toString method, and inside this method we type return this dot name. And once we are done with this, we are good to go, and we have successfully set up a class for our drinks. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be actually designing the layout of our application, and we are going to make it look good. So as you could see right now, the layout of our application is empty, and we need to decorate it with certain images and a list view which is going to display the options for the user to select from. So the next thing which we do is that we go ahead and add some images here. So what we are going to do is that we are going to have a logo, or we are going to have an image of coffee here, and then we are going to have a logo right over here. So in order to go ahead and add a logo here, what we do is that we switch to the text view of this XML, and we are going to add in a new image view right over here. So we go right here and we type image view, and for the layout width we are going to use the layout width as 200 dp, and for the layout height we are going to specify the layout height as, let's say, 100 dp. So once we have set it, the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to add in an actual image to this image view. So we type Android and we type src, which stands for source, then we type this equals, and we use one of the images which we have. So this image is present in the drawable folder, so we type at drawable slash, and let's say we are going to use the image for cappuccino, so we type cap here. So once we are done with this, if we switch to the design view, as you could see, we have this image right over here. So this is the basic image which we are using, and actually you could use any image. So if you think that you should use the image for latte, then you could simply switch to your XML, go to text and change this to latte. And when you change it and when you switch back to the design view, as you could see, we have our image right there. Now the next thing which we do is that we actually add some description to it. So in order to add a description, we go here and then we type Android, then we type content description, and let's say we want to display some text over here. So instead of directly typing in some text to display, we use string resource. So we type at string, and let's name this as app logo. And actually when we add a string resource, we also need to add this string resource into the strings.xml file. So if we switch to the strings.xml file, we actually need to add string here. So we type string, and inside the name we type app logo, and when we end the string tag, we type the actual name of our app. So we type coffee buzz. So once we are done with this, we are good to go. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we also need to add a list view to our application. So if we switch to the XML, we go ahead here and add a list view which actually contains multiple options for the user to select from. So in order to add a list view, we type list view, and the layout width of this thing is going to be match parent, and the layout width or the layout height is also going to be equal to match parent. Now once we have defined this, the next thing which we do is that we add an ID to this list view. So we go right here and we define the ID. So we type Android ID, and we type this equals to @+id slash, and let's name it as list options. And in order to actually add entries to this list view, we type Android entries, and inside the entries we use an array, so we type at array, then give a slash and type in options. Now the main problem with this is that we actually need to add arrays in the string, so we switch back to strings here, and we are going to add string array here, so we type string array, and let's name this as options as we have used the same name, so we type options here, close the array, and inside it we define some items inside it, so we type item, close it, and let's define the first item as drinks. So if the user want to select some drinks, he could go with this item, or let's say if he wants food, so we type food here in the second item, and for the third item let's say he wants some other items, so we type in other over here. So once this is done, when we switch to the XML view, as you could see, the error has been removed, and when we switch to design view, as you could see, the list has been added over here. But the thing is that the items are not actually displayed here, but if we run our application, you will notice that these items are actually added over there. Now one more thing which we need to do is that we need to minimize the size of this, so let's say this is up till here. So we have our logo here and we have our list over here. So once we are done with this, we are good to go. So let's check what our application looks like in actual. So we save the code and we run the code on the emulator. So as you could see, our application is up and running on the emulator. So this is the basic main screen layout of our application. So here is our logo image, and we basically have three options here for drinks, food and other. So as you could see, when we click on it, nothing happens, and that is because we have not yet added the methods which are going to be performed when we click these options right over here. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be learning about how to handle these events right here. So what we are going to do is that whenever we select this option, which is called as drinks, it should basically redirect us to a new activity which will provide us certain options to choose from. So when we click this drinks here, we will be prompted with various options like latte, cappuccino or filter coffee. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to design the basic layout of our application, and we have also designed the class for the activity of drinks. So in the previous tutorial, we have created this simple app layout for our application in which we have an image here and we had a bunch of options to select from this menu right here. Now the thing was that we actually had various options here, but when we clicked them, nothing happened, and the main reason for that is we have not yet added the listeners for these options, so that when one of them is selected, something should happen. So the next thing which we need to do is that we need to add action listeners to these things, so that on selecting the option, something should happen. So in order to do that, we switch to this main activity.java class, and inside this class, the first thing which we need to do is that we need to delete the toolbar. So once we have deleted the toolbar, the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to add an action listener to it. Now in order to add an action listener, what we do is that we type adapter view, and inside it we are going to use the method which is called as on item click listener. So we type on item click listener, and after adding the item click listener, we need to create its object. So we type item click listener equals new adapter view. Then after this we give a dot operator and then type on item click listener. And once we have it, the next thing which we do is that we define the code for it. So in order to define the code inside it, the first thing which we need to include is that we need to actually include the view that was clicked. Now in this case, we are going to click the list view. So in order to add it, we type public void on item click, and inside the parameters for this, we are going to specify a few things. So the first thing is going to be the adapter view. So we type adapter view, then inside these brackets we specify a question mark, then we type list view, then give a comma, again type a view, item view, then we specify the position. So we type int position, and finally we pass in the ID. So we type long ID. So what we have done here is that we have added a few parameters that are going to basically give us an ID. So you might be a little bit confused about these parameters here. So the reason why we have included these parameters is that these parameters are going to give us an idea about which particular item on the list is clicked. So these are the things which we need to have in order to understand which item is being clicked. Now once we have it, we give an opening and a closing curly brace, and inside it we are going to check at which particular position is the item present. So for the first item, the position is going to be 0. So in order to check the button click, or in order to check the click for the first option, we type if the position, if this is equal to 0, then in that case what we want to do is that we want to launch a new activity. So in order to launch a new activity, what we do is that we use intent. So we create an object of intent. So we type intent equals new intent. So the first thing which we need to mention is going to be the current activity which we are working with. So that is going to be the main activity. So we type main activity dot this, as we are dealing with current object. And the next thing which we need to mention is going to be the activity which we want to actually launch. So in this case, what we want to do is that we want to launch the drink category activity, and this activity is basically not present right now, so we are going to basically create it, but for the sake of this tutorial we are going to name it anyway. So we type drink category activity dot class. So once it is done, the only thing which we need to do now is that we need to actually start the activity. So we type start activity, and in this we are just going to specify the intent. So we type intent over here. So as you could see, it is showing us an error, and that is because we have not yet defined this activity, and we are basically going to go ahead and create this activity immediately so that it resolves the error. And one more thing which we need to take care of is that we should have a semicolon right over here. So now let's go ahead and add this activity right here. So we simply copy the name of this activity, and what we are going to do is that we are going to create a class for this. So we go inside this app folder in the Java folder, and we are going to go right in this first package or the first folder, and we are going to create a new Java class, and we are going to name it as drink category activity. And this is basically going to contain the several choices from which we are going to choose. So we simply select it and click OK, and as you could see, this error right here has been resolved. And one thing which we need to change here is that we are going to name this view as V and not the list view. So make sure that you make relevant changes. Now once everything is done, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to attach the on-click item listener to the list view. So in order to do so, we are going to go right below here, and here we are going to type in some code which is nothing but we are going to basically attach the two things. So we type list view first. So after list view, we are going to name this list view as list view, and we are going to typecast it to list view, and we are going to have a reference to it by using find view by id r.id list options. And once we have a reference to it, basically we are going to add up the item click listener to this list view right here. So we type list view dot set on item click listener, and in the parameters we are going to pass the item click listener. So we type item click listener right over here. So once everything is done, we are good to go, but the thing is that we are still having an error over here at this point, and basically we are going to resolve this error in the next tutorial. So that's it for this tutorial, and in this tutorial we learned how to add an on item click listener to the list, so that whenever one item in the list is clicked or is tapped on, so what happens is that it is actually going to start a new intent. So basically we have added the functionality for that, and in the next tutorial we'll be dealing with this error and why this error actually occurs. So what we have done is that in the previous tutorial we had an error, and the thing was that this was the code which we have written in the previous tutorial. So what I simply did is that I have replaced this code by this code, and inside it what I have done is that for position 0, that is for the first position, whenever the item on the first position was selected, we have created a new intent, and we are going to start a new activity with this intent. So if you are having an error from the previous tutorial, make sure that you replace this line right here by this line. So it is going to remove your error. And the next thing which we are trying to achieve here is that whenever we clicked the first list item on our screen, what should happen is that it should redirect to a new activity, which is nothing but this drink category activity. So if you have a look here, this is our drink category activity right here, and if we open it up, as you could see, there is nothing here right now, and actually we need to add in some code into it. So what we want this activity to do is that we want this activity to have a list, and the list should actually contain certain elements, and those elements are nothing but the categories of the type of drinks or the type of food which we are offering on this app. So the only thing which we need to do is that we need to add list activity to this. So in order to add a list activity to this class right here, what we do is that we make this class extend the list activity. So we go here and type extends list activity. So a list activity is basically an activity which is simply going to contain a list and nothing more than that. So as here we want to display a list, we have used the list activity. And now once we have the list activity, as in case of any other method, as we have the onCreate method, we also need to add an onCreate method over here. So if we switch back to main activity, as you could see, this is our onCreate method. So in order to create an onCreate method, we used protected void onCreate. Then inside parameters, we have bundle save instant state. Now in this case, we are going to do the same. So we simply copy this line of code in order to save time, and let's go here and paste it. Click OK, and also make sure that you have an additional closing curly bracket. And as you could see, as soon as we have added this method right here, it is going to show us an error, and this error is going to be removed if we use the onCreate method here. And in order to remove this error, we type super dot onCreate, and make sure that you type the O as small letter. Then we type onCreate, and inside it we pass the parameter as saved instant state. So as you could see, we have basically created the list activity. Now the next thing would be to actually have this list activity whose name is drink category activity into the manifest. And the reason for doing that is whichever activity we use in an application should be added to the manifest. So if we go to the app folder, if we go to manifest, and if we switch to this Android manifest.xml, this is the place right here which this activity ends. And as soon as this ends, we actually need to add in the newly created activity, which is nothing but the drink category activity. So in order to add an activity, we type activity, and Android name is going to be the drink category activity, which it is already popping up. So we simply hit enter, and as you could see, our activity has been added. So we simply exit out of it. So as you could see, we have successfully added the new activity, which is nothing but the drink category activity, into our manifest. So once it is done, we switch back to this drink category activity.java, and actually in order to make this activity display a list, what we are going to do is that we are going to create a new list view here so that it is going to display a list. So in order to create a list, we go right here and then we use a list view. So we type list view, and let's name this list view as, let's say, list drinks. So we type list view list drinks equals get list view, and after this we are going to create an array adapter so that this array adapter could be used in order to display each and every element present in the list. So in order to create an array adapter, we go right below here and we type array adapter, and in the brackets we type drinks, and remember that this drinks is nothing but the class. Then we type list adapter equals new array adapter, and within this we are going to specify a few parameters. So the first parameter is going to be this, as we are dealing with the current object, and the second parameter would be the actual list item which we are dealing with. So we type android dot r dot layout dot simple list item 1. So after this, the next parameter which we are going to add is going to be the drinks. So we give a comma, then we type drinks dot drinks. So once it is done, we are good to go. Now the only thing which we need to do is that we need to give a semicolon here, and after this we actually want to set the list view to the adapter which contains the drinks or the name of the drinks. So we type list adapter, or sorry, it should be list drinks, which is nothing but the object of list view which we have created right over here. So list drinks dot set adapter, and we are going to assign this the list adapter which we have created. So once it is done, we are good to go. Now in order to check if our application performs correctly, we are going to save the code and we are going to execute this application onto the emulator. So as you could see, our application is up and running on the emulator, and when we try to select drinks, and as you could see, now we switch to a new activity which is basically a list which contains 3 options. The first one is the latte, the second one is cappuccino, and the third one is filter. So if we select any of these options, nothing happens, and that is because we have not yet added the code to handle events related to this. Now also one more thing which I need to clarify is that if you select this food, nothing is going to happen, and that is because we have only added the action listener to this drinks option right here. So make sure that you only select this option right here, which is drinks, and actually you could copy the same code if you actually want to make these 2 options functional. But for the sake of understanding, we have taken an example of only one option. So if we click it, we will be presented with a list view here. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how we switched from this activity right here to a new activity which is nothing but a list view. And we have also created this list view right here. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we are going to make these things functional, and we are going to design our application in such a way that whenever we click on latte, it is going to actually present us a picture of a latte, and it is actually going to show us the description of it. So in the previous tutorial, we have created this list activity in the drink category activity.java class. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to handle the click events as we have handled the click in the main activity. Now in order to handle clicks in the main activity, what we did is that we have used the onItem click listener in order to listen to the click, and finally we have used an intent inside it so that whenever a click related to a particular list item happens, it actually starts a new activity. So we are going to do something same in this drink category activity.java class as well. So the next thing which we need to do in order to listen to an event is that we also need to add an on list item click. So in order to add an on list item click to this, we go here and we type public void on list item click, and in the parameters we are going to pass in the list view. Let's name this as list view, give a comma. The second parameter is going to be the item view, so we type view item view, and actually the view is not imported, hence it is showing us an error. So if we press alt enter, the view would be automatically imported for us. Now after the view, the next thing which we need to add in is the position that the item being selected. So we type integer position, then again give a comma, and in the final thing we are going to access the ID, so we type long ID, and also make sure that you have a closing curly bracket right after here, so that we could make sure that the code which is written here is actually present outside the onCreate. So now once we have this method right here, we are basically going to create a new intent inside it so as to start a new activity. So we type intent and make sure to import the intent, and once it is imported, we again create the object of intent, then we type this equals new intent, and in this we are going to pass in the current activity name, which is the drinks category activity dot this as the first parameter, then give a comma, and the second parameter is going to be the class name of the new activity which we are going to use, and let's name this as the drink activity. So we type drink activity dot class, and you don't worry if it is going to show you an error, and that is because we have not yet created this activity and we are going to create it soon. So once we have it, the next thing which we do is that we actually pass in a message to this intent. So we have already studied how to pass a message with an intent. So we type intent, and actually put extra is a method which is used whenever we try to pass additional info or additional message with the intent. So we use put extra, and inside it we pass in the activity name, which is nothing but the drink activity, and basically we are going to pass in the name of the drink which we have. So we type dot, and we are going to name it as extra drink number. So we type extra underscore drink no. So extra drink number actually stands for the number of the drink, and then finally we actually want to pass an ID, so we type integer ID. And finally, in order to start an activity, we use the method start activity, and we are going to pass in the intent which we have just created. So basically our next step would be to actually create an activity which is named as the drink activity. So in order to create a new activity, we go inside the Java folder and we are going to select the first folder which actually contains all the classes. Then finally we right click on it, go to new, and we are going to select an activity. And in this case, as we want a blank activity, we select this option which says blank activity. And let's go ahead and name this activity as something. So the name of this activity is actually going to be drink activity, as we have already used this name. So we go right here and then we type drink activity. Now in the previous tutorial, I've also added an additional message inside this intent. So the main intention behind including an additional message here was that if your application had some user login or user sign up, then what this element would be used for is that whenever you try to actually have the name of the user on each and every screen, so you could actually pass the name by using this extra message from one intent to other intent. But for the sake of this tutorial, will not be dealing with this, so I'll just comment this intent. So what we are going to do here in this tutorial is we are going to design the final activity. So if we switch to this drink activity.java, as you could see, this is the Java class and I've cleaned it up. And what I did was that I've created a new image view right here. So this is basically going to hold the image of the product, and this thing right here is going to be the text view, which actually will display the name of the product, and this thing right here will actually display the description of the product. So let's go ahead and add an image to this image view. So if we select the image view, go to properties, and if we go to background, we just simply need to select a particular image for this. So we go to the project tab, and inside it we select the image for latte. So as you could see, the image appeared right over here. And now for the text view, what we could do is that instead of this small text view, we could have a large text. So let's say we drag and drop a large text over here, and this is going to be the description of it. And actually it is better if we have both of them as large text, as it would display the contents properly. So we drag a large text here and go to properties, go to text, and change the text to the product name, which is latte. And remember that we are creating this activity just for the sake of first option, and you could create the activities for the second and third option as well. And basically we are going to have a description right at the bottom. So we are going to drag one more large text view, and we are going to add in description in the text. So we type in here, let's say this is latte, and basically we are going to copy and paste it multiple number of times, but you could actually add a description over here. So if we just add it, it is going to display the description like this. And also, in order to make it look more attractive, what you could do is that you could actually select both of these, and we could change the color of this to, and we could actually change the color of this thing to white, complete white. Click OK, and we could change the background of this thing right here to black, so as to make it look more attractive. So we could select this color picker, and we could select this color right here, click OK. And as you could see, now our application looks a bit attractive if we add styling to it. Now if you want, you could also change the color of this thing right here by changing the properties. So this is basically the layout which is ready with us. Now the next thing which we could do is that we could finally run our application so as to test it if this thing works. So let's go ahead and save the code, and if we run it on the emulator, so as you could see, our application is up and running on the emulator. And if we select the first option, drinks, it brings us to the list view activity, and when we select latte, it brings us to this page which has the name of the product and the description of the product along with the image. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to create a simple coffee shop application. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.